Alright, finally we have something new going on with Dokkan. As you guys can see right here, we have our newest teaser image for our upcoming Dokkan Fest character now that we are leaving Tanaba 2.0 behind. And with this image right here, there are already two main things we gotta point out. First thing is clearly our next character seems to be some type of villain. Secondly, they seem to be a villain with a lot of characters behind their back. Unfortunately, this is the only image we have for our new Dokkan Fest, but today I figured why not go ahead with this image and have a bit of a chill discussion talking about who our next Dokkan Fest is probably going to be. You know, talking about the popular character choices, talking about who I want to see personally, and of course, you know, talking about some of the other nuances to consider in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, it's gonna be a chill day today. Hope you guys enjoy the vid though. If you do, show your support down below, of course, and also comment down below your thoughts. Let me know, who do you think is going to be our next Dokkan Fest character, especially with this image in mind? Who do you want to see it become personally? But with that being said, let's go ahead and get straight into it. So yeah, going back to this image, like I said earlier, there are two big takeaways: a villain, and secondly, a villain with a lot of people in their corner, a lot of people with their, like, serving as like a team, basically like an army, right? So with this kind of image in mind, I think for a lot of people already, two main characters just come right out onto the screen, just like as like big ideas for our next Dokkan Fest character. The first is Metal Cooler, and the second is Baby. And honestly, if you ask me, both characters make perfect sense. Metal Cooler, obviously, like when we look at the GIF right here, kind of playing on the side here, Metal Cooler literally has an army with him of just himself. So this kind of makes sense. I mean, if you kind of like break it down, it's the same silhouette, if you will, you know, the same character, all villains. So yeah, I mean, in that sense, you could argue it's Metal Cooler. It kind of makes sense there. Baby also, though, to me makes sense as well, because again, remember with Baby had an army in all the other Earthlings, because he just kept possessing people. He was literally infecting everyone, possessing them, literally just had everyone else in his corner. So for me, both characters make perfect sense, if you will. Like, you could tell me Baby is just as likely as Metal Cooler, and I would agree with you, because from this alone, you can make the argument for both sides of like the character choices, and I mean, yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense. But the first one I want to kind of talk about in greater detail is Metal Cooler. Now, Metal Cooler has obviously been a character that has not seen a lot of representation in Dokkan specifically. However, he did get a lot of representation recently with Dragon Ball Legends, because obviously like a month to a month and a half ago, we just got Metal Cooler in Legends. Now, I will say, when it comes to this Cooler, right, the Legends version of Cooler, this Cooler has been absolutely fumbled. Honestly, as far as I'm concerned, I hope Dokkan doesn't come even close to how bad Legends did Cooler right here. I hope Dokkan does a much better job, because, I mean, honestly, Metal Cooler deserves that much respect as far as I'm concerned. Now, the thing is, with Metal Cooler being an option, there are a lot of benefits that can come from that, specifically for an example, the Wicked Bloodline category, where Cooler is a big figure in that category, right? Obviously, we just recently got Gold Jita, 10th anniversary, we got Gold Frieza, the recent EZA for Golden Frieza here, the EZA for Full Power Frieza right there. So, you know, Wicked Bloodline has some pretty good characters, but also it isn't fully all together. What could bring it together is the addition of a new Metal Cooler. And so, I mean, from that specific standpoint, you know, I look at it, Metal Cooler does kind of make sense to me. If we look at the categories the Metal Cooler could potentially fit on based off, you know, previous Cooler, I mean, we're talking about categories like Terrifying Conquerors, Target Goku, again, Wicked Bloodline, movie bosses, powerful comeback, those types of categories, that, you know, is really exciting for me when I think about the idea of Metal Cooler potentially being our next Dokkan Fest character. And yet at the same time, I will say right now, he is not my personal pick. He is, like, I acknowledge the Metal Cooler has a very good chance of being our next Dokkan Fest character, but I just don't think that he's going to be our next Dokkan Fest character officially, and I also don't really want him to be for some specific reasons, which I'll talk about in just a moment, but I just want to say that right there. Compare that to the other character, right? When we look at Baby, as far as I'm like thinking of it, I think Baby is a far more likely option to see given everything that's happened this year, right? Obviously, when we look at GT Bosses has seen a lot of love throughout this year, right? Especially, mainly really the GDC celebration, because the GDC celebration gave us a bunch of EZAs and sub EZAs like, you know, like Shenron right here and stuff, but also it gave us Omega Shenron, a top 5 character in the game. For some people, they put him as far as top number 1, but still, you know, you're talking about a character with a lot of respect put in his name. And Omega, being a Dokkan Fest LR, means he's got GT bosses, but also power absorption, inhuman deeds. He is able to build some really strong teams already. Having Baby be included could mean another buff to the GT bosses category, which, as far as I'm concerned, I am perfectly welcoming that. I am wholeheartedly accepting that, embracing that. I am cool with it. wholeheartedly. I mean, when we look at, Super Baby 2, right? Most likely the version of Baby we'll see, right? When we look at Baby and the categories he's in, similar kind of stuff, right? Terrifying Conquerors, Target Goku, stuff like that, of course. But also, he's on other things like Battle of Fate, Giant Ape Power, GT Bosses, obviously, Inhuman Deeds, Corroded Body and Mind, Space Traveling Warriors. He's on a lot of categories, of course, right? So the idea that we could get another Baby, I think that is, in my opinion, far more likely to be expected. I am more open to seeing it, and honestly, if you ask me, that is who I hope to see for our next Dokkan Fest character. Now, in the grand scheme of things, I think GT Bosses is in a pretty good spot right now, but the idea of adding Baby will just make GT Bosses even better, and really, when it comes to the two different options, the reason why I personally prefer Baby as a choice isn't really just strictly in terms of like Baby being the character versus Metal Cooler, but more so the upgrades that we could see next to them. And this image is so bad quality, I'm so sorry for that, but when we look at the EZAs that are remaining to be done, right? When we look at Metal Cooler, the big EZAs that are kind of like coming to everyone's mind is going to be the Worldwide Celebration EZAs, right? Metal Cooler right here, maybe Final Form Cooler, maybe Goku and Vegeta, characters like them. Those are the characters that are really kind of springing to mind when you think about the potential EZAs for a Dokkan Fest Metal Cooler, because it kind of makes sense. It's the same kind of timeline. It would be like kind of helpful buffs and stuff. For me though, the idea that we're going to be taking our Worldwide Celebration characters and giving them their EZAs for a random Dokkan Fest timeline, that just makes no sense to me. I'm sorry, like, do I want them to EZA? Absolutely, I want them to be relevant again. I still remember how awesome this Final Form Cooler was on release. I love this cooler. If it can be relevant again, I'm here for it. But when I look at the timing of things, I would much rather at this point just wait 3, maybe 4 months for these guys to get their EZAs during the 11th anniversary. Like, it's not that far away. I just think it would make much more sense there. Compare that to Baby, right? With Baby, we could see the EZA for, Super 17 right here. We could see maybe some other artificial life forms. Technically, I believe the androids fit into that, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that, but still, you got characters like them. Technically, there's all sorts of random characters they could do. They could take like transformation boost and like give this Frieza maybe some love and stuff. But as far as I'm concerned, even though like the list I kind of mentioned, Baby has a bit of a weak roster for EZAs, I still think Baby is a far better choice. Like, maybe I'm like kind of like on the hot take side of things in that specific focus. Maybe that's not the popular opinion, I guess. But for me, I think Baby is just a much clearer option in terms of what is better. Because yes, you can justify Metal Cooler just as well, but if you put Metal Cooler, then everyone is going to be eyeing these Worldwide Celebration EZAs. And if you don't do them, on one hand, yeah, that can make sense. On the other hand, the entire player base is going to feel cucked. Like, it's going to be like one of those moments. So I think in the grand scheme of things, it's just wiser to leave Metal Cooler off the table, keep him away. I just don't expect him to be our next Dokkan Fest character. Now, the last character I want to talk about before we kind of like start to like finish things up, again, this is kind of like a short vid here. The last character I want to mention is Garlic Jr., because apparently Garlic Jr. is getting a bit of recognition. I will say, Garlic Jr. has a bit of potential chance to make it, especially because with the EZAs to consider, we're talking about LR Goku and Piccolo, Gohan with like the unit attack, if I remember right, for Krillin and Piccolo there. Those characters could get EZAs. So they could fit pretty nicely, right? But again, like, I don't know. I mean, Garlic Jr. could work. Remember we had last year Lord Slug as a Dokkan Fest, and I'm sure a lot of people going into it didn't really look highly on Lord Slug. Now, he's probably, if you look back, he's probably one of the better Dokkan Fest character releases, like the TOR releases from that year. But yeah, I mean, again, like, when we look at all these different characters, for me, I personally want to see Baby be the Dokkan Fest, because Baby is one of my more favorite characters, but also I think further boosting GT bosses at this point would be so fun, especially given how much GT has gotten overall. Not just GT bosses, but also GT heroes, right? 10th anniversary, you had Super Saiyan 4 Goku. Obviously, we had like throughout Saiyan and stuff, the EZAs for like some of the Golden Week characters, GDC, Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, all the different free-to-play characters and all the different stuff, Nova Shenron, obviously the different EZAs and all that stuff, Omega Shenron. So I think from the grand scheme of things, I think Baby makes the most sense. Garlic Jr., I can actually see that working, especially because, again, we had Lord Slug last year. I think Garlic Jr. could work. The last character, now that I think about everything, the last character I would want to see is Metal Cooler. Is he likely to happen? Probably, yeah, because, I mean, this kind of screams Metal Cooler in some ways, right? But at the same time, I just don't think he's a good choice. Not because Metal Cooler could not work, but more so because of these EZAs right here. They're just so right in front of our faces, so obvious as picks. And the fact of the matter is, if Dokkan uses these types of height character picks on a random Dokkan Fest, I would be heavily concerned about the quality of their EZA designs, because that means they would probably be designed in a fashion that is not conducive for them to survive the 11th anniversary, like power shifting and everything, right? So that's just kind of my thoughts right there. But yeah, anyways, let me know in the comments down below, what do you guys think? Because that is going to be where we wrap things up. Again, let me know, who do you think the next Dokkan Fest is going to be? What do you guys think about my personal choice of like Baby being the next Dokkan Fest character? Do you agree, disagree? Let me know in the comments down below. If you guys enjoyed the vid, again, show your support down below, drop a like, subscribe to the channel, all those wonderful things. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.